The ultrasound report I'd shaken loose from a stack of documents on my desk lay under the lamplight, its clinical black and white draining the color from my face. I had been excited for a moment, but the date on the report was clear: gestational age, 3 months. My marriage to Sophie Miller was a business arrangement, a merger of families. We'd been married for 2. If the Millers wanted to renege on our deal, then they could live with the consequences. After signing the last of the bailout papers from Miller Industries, I'd pulled open the top drawer of my mahogany desk, looking for a bit of comfort for the evening. A Patek Philippe gleamed beside a Richard Mille 001. A tangled mess of keys to a fleet of luxury cars sat in a corner. But the DuPont lighter was missing. I frowned, shuffling through a pile of contracts. My eyes snagged on a laminated sheet tucked inside the Miller Industries portfolio. My body went rigid. My eyes widened. It was an ultrasound report. The name printed at the top was my wife of 2 months, Sophie Miller. Gestational age, 22 weeks. Over 5 months. I'd only known her for 3. We'd been married for 2. A hot surge of blood rushed to my head. My fingers clenched, crinkling the smooth plastic of the report. Sophie, I snarled to the empty room. You take me for a goddamn fool. I snatched my phone and dialed my assistant, Leo. Leo, I need everything you can find on Sophie Miller for the past 6 months. Every place she's been. Everyone she's had sustained contact with. I want it in 30 minutes. I paused, my voice dropping to an icy calm. Pull all her financials and freeze her cards. All of them. A cold fire burned in my eyes. And effective immediately, terminate the bailout package from Miller Industries. Cancel all our joint ventures. Claw back every cent of the funding. Pull every last one of our personnel out of their offices. I want them back at Hayes Global by morning. Sophie, you want to play with fire? Then I'll burn your whole world to the ground. On the other end of the line, Leo was silent for a beat, processing the rapid-fire orders. Right away, Mr. Hayes, he said, his voice pure efficiency. The ultrasound report lay on my desk, mocking me. 22 weeks. The words were a sick joke. 2 months ago, Miller Industries was on the brink of collapse, its supply chain in tatters. Sophie's father, Stephen Miller, had come to my grandfather, cap in hand. He'd offered up his daughter, a marriage alliance to secure a lifeline from Hayes Global. After the wedding, our life had been one of polite, sterile distance. Respectful, even. On the surface, she was the perfect corporate wife. No scandals, no drama. And now this. She was carrying another man's child, planning to pass it off as mine. An heir to the Hayes fortune. The rage crested again. I stabbed at my phone, dialing her head of legal. Sophie Miller. Infidelity clause. I want a divorce agreement drafted that leaves her with nothing but the clothes on her back. On my desk tonight. Yes, Mr. Hayes. Right away. I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling into the still air of my office. My face was a thundercloud, dark and ready to break. 30 minutes later, a sharp rap sounded on my office door. Come in. Leo entered, carrying a thick file. He sat on my desk, pulling out a few key pages and placing them in front of me. Sir, he began, his tone grave, we have the preliminary report. The pregnancy was confirmed 3 months ago. She's been getting checkups at Lakeside Private, one of our subsidiary hospitals. The attending physician is a DR. Lynn. The results of the last scan indicate. It's a boy. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. A boy. They were really trying to set the hook deep. Since the wedding, Mrs. Hayes has kept a low profile. Home. A few charity events, the office. No contact with any other men of note, except for a new executive assistant she hired. His name is Caleb Vance. He occasionally drives her home. Leo wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. The only person of interest is this Caleb Vance. Our records show he and Mrs. Hayes were classmates at Northwestern. I waved a dismissive hand. Stop the investigation. Just find Caleb Vance and pick him up. If I couldn't see what was right in front of my face, I had no business running a multi-billion-dollar empire. I pulled out my phone and called Sophie. Her voice, when she answered, was laced with honey. Landon? Honey, I'm at the office. No meetings this afternoon, so I was thinking I could come home and make you dinner. I have a surprise for you. A surprise. If I hadn't found that report, her little surprise might have actually worked. My parents died years ago, leaving me the last of the direct Hayes line. When her father had proposed a marriage, my grandfather had agreed instantly, eager for a great-grandchild. If she'd announced her pregnancy to him, the old man would have probably signed over a chunk of the company to his great-grandson on the spot. I ended the call without a word. Get my security detail, 10 men, and get Rhino. Leo flinched. Rhino was an ex-special forces operator with a dark past in the private mercenary world. The number of men he'd put in the ground was in the double digits. When Rhino was called, Blood was spilled. Hayes Global had pulled him out of a black site prison, and in return, he served me with absolute loyalty. This time I wanted blood. And one more thing, I said, my voice flat. Get a DNA testing team from Lakeside. Tell them to meet me at the Miller Industries Tower. We're doing a paternity test. On site, I slid into the back of my Rolls-Royce. Behind me, a convoy of black SUVs filled with my security detail pulled into formation. Inside the car, I lit another cigarette. Leo passed me his tablet, a photo of Caleb Vance on screen. He was handsome in a soft, boyish way. That face wouldn't be handsome for much longer. My phone buzzed relentlessly. A dozen calls from Stephen Miller. He must have gotten the news about the bailout. Then a call from Sophie. This time I answered. Her voice was soft, laced with a delicate confusion. Landon, what happened? My Amex was just declined. I chuckled, a low, cruel sound. Why? Did you need it to keep paying for another man's child? There was a clatter on the other end, the sound of her phone hitting the floor. A moment later, she snatched it back up, her voice ragged and strained. Landon, what are you talking about? I hung up. The motorcade swept into the underground garage of the Miller Industries Tower. The old security guard saw the Hayes Global insignia on the rolls and raised the barrier from a mile away. The team from Lakeside was already there, a line of white-coated technicians waiting nervously. As I stepped out of the car, they all bowed their heads in unison. Mr. Hayes. I gave a curt nod and took the private elevator to the top floor, to Sophie and Stephen Miller's executive offices. I found them pacing like caged animals. Sophie, what in God's name is going on? Stephen Miller was frantic. Landon just pulled a plug. We were just starting to turn things around. We can't make payroll next month without the Hayes funding. Sophie's face was pale with fear. The words were on the tip of her tongue, but she swallowed them back. I don't know. Stephen ran a hand through his thinning hair. Did you do something to piss him off? He paused, a thought dawning on him. That new assistant. I told you not to hire that Caleb kid. What man wants his wife running around with a handsome, young assistant all day? Sophie's face went white. It has nothing to do with Caleb. Just then, the office door exploded inward, kicked off its hinges. The solid mahogany panel flew across the room and crashed against the far wall. No connection? I said, stepping through the ruined doorway, my face a mask of cold fury. We'll see about that. My security detail fanned out behind me, filling the opulent office until it felt small and cramped. Stephen Miller broke out in a cold sweat, forcing a sickly smile as he scurried forward. Landon, my boy, you're here. I sneered. Don't call me that, old man. I wouldn't be caught dead as your son-in-law. His smile froze and shattered. Landon, what is this all about? Why bring all these men? My gaze was like ice as I pointed a finger at Sophie. Why don't you ask her? Sophie was trembling, her eyes darting everywhere but at my face. She lifted her chin defiantly. I don't know what you're talking about. A laugh, sharp and bitter, escaped my lips. Still playing dumb? I wasn't in the mood for games. I closed the distance between us, grabbing her chin and forcing her to look at me. Then, I drew my hand back and slapped her hard. Crack! The sound echoed in the stunned silence. Sophie stared at me, her cheek flaming red, a look of pure shock on her face. Stephen was frozen, his mouth agape. You're carrying Caleb Vance's child behind my back and trying to pass him off as a Hayes. I threw the ultrasound report at her face. It fluttered to the floor at her feet. The last trace of color drained from Sophie's face, but she was still scrambling for a lie. Landon, you're mistaken. That's not my report. There are thousands of women named Sophie Miller in the world. How can you be so sure it's mine? I watched her pathetic performance, a cold smile touching my lips. Then I drove my foot into her stomach. She crumpled to the ground. Before she could recover, I grabbed a handful of her hair and dragged her, like a sack of garbage, into the adjoining conference room. You want proof? I'll give you fucking proof. Get in here. I barked to the medical team. I want an amniocentesis. I want the DNA results within the hour. Sophie finally broke. The performance was over. Raw terror took its place. No, she shrieked, struggling against my grip. No, an amnio can hurt the baby. Landon, I'm begging you, please don't. A cold smile spread across my face. So you admit it. Two burly nurses grabbed her, hauling her onto a chair while she kicked and screamed. Her slight frame was no match for them. Patient is agitated, the doctor said calmly. Administering a sedative. He produced a syringe. Sophie's struggles intensified. Landon Hayes, you're killing our child. I'll never forgive you. You'll rot in hell for this, Landon. You'll. As the sedative slowly entered her bloodstream, her screams subsided into ragged sobs. Her body went limp, but her eyes, wide and red, burned with a furious, helpless hatred. The doctor began the procedure, his movements swift and professional. I stepped back out of the room and lit a cigarette, the tip glowing like a demon's eye in the dim hallway. Sophie was dealt with. Now it was Stephen Miller's turn. There was no way the old fox didn't know. A 5-month pregnancy is hard to hide. The security guard from the lobby, hearing the commotion, cautiously pushed the door open. He took one look at the room, full of stone-faced men in dark suits, all turning to stare at him, and wisely decided to back away, pulling the door shut behind him. For a $2,000 a month salary, he wasn't about to die a hero. "Have a seat," I said, kicking a chair toward Stephen. "Don't say I didn't show you any courtesy." Rhino immediately stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on the old man's shoulder and forcing him down into the chair. "Old man, you have one chance to give me a plausible explanation," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Otherwise, I'll make sure Miller Industries vanishes from Chicago within 3 days." A tremor ran through Stephen's body. He was still clutching the ultrasound report, his face a mask of misery. "Landon, I swear, I only just found out about this myself," he whimpered. "You have my word. If Sophie is at fault, I will not spare her. I swear to you, that child will never see the light of day." He spoke with a desperate, furious conviction. He had to. Rhino was standing beside him, his jacket bulging in a way that suggested either a gun or a very large knife. Stephen knew that a single wrong word would get him killed right here in his own office. "Landon, I'm begging you, for the sake of the history between our families, the friendship you have with my grandfather, give me a chance to make this right. I will personally find Caleb Vance and deliver him to you." His face was a canvas of pure desperation. In his heart, he was already imagining the 1,000 cuts he wanted to inflict on Sophie and her lover. I stared at him, my face a granite mask. "Fine, I'll give you that chance. But if that little tramp tries to give birth to that bastard and tarnish the Hayes name, you won't mind if I dump your entire family into Lake Michigan to feed the fish, will you?" A fresh wave of cold sweat broke out on Stephen's brow. He nodded frantically. "Of course, Landon, of course. But if this is all a misunderstanding, you must apologize to me and Sophie. And you must increase your investment in Miller Industries." The old bastard still thought he could salvage this? I let out a short, sharp laugh. "There is no misunderstanding." 2 hours later, the doctor emerged, his face grim. He held a single sheet of paper. "Mr. Hayes, the results are conclusive. The fetus's DNA is not a match for yours. My company kept my DNA profile on file, a standard for the executive board." Stephen Miller's heart sank. His face, which had been pale, turned ashen. The last glimmer of hope was extinguished. I glanced through the window at Sophie, now sleeping peacefully under the sedative's influence. A wave of pure disgust washed over me. An impulse, dark and violent, rose in my throat, the urge to personally drag her to the lakefront and hold her under the icy water. "Take her to Lakeside Private," I ordered. "Terminate the pregnancy immediately." I turned to Stephen. "And you're going with her. Don't even think about trying anything." Stephen's hair seemed to turn a shade grayer. He nodded, defeated. An ambulance soon arrived to take Sophie away. As it pulled out, my phone rang. It was Leo. "Mr. Hayes, we got Caleb Vance." "Oh, where?" "He was trying to get out of the city. We had to ram his car to stop him. Wrecked 2 of our SUVs in the process. He was quick to run, but in my city, there was nowhere to hide. Take him to that abandoned Miller factory on the south side. And Leo, find out everything you can about his family." "Right away, sir." 30 minutes later, my car pulled up to the derelict factory. It was a failed project of Miller Industries, left to rot after their funding dried up. Inside the cavernous, echoing space, Caleb Vance was hanging from a steel beam by his wrists, a dirty rag stuffed in his mouth. A trickle of blood ran down his temple. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened in terror, and he began to struggle, muffled shouts escaping the gag. "Cut him down," I commanded. Rhino sliced the rope and pulled the rag from Caleb's mouth. As his feet touched the concrete floor, I looked at his handsome face, and a fresh surge of rage boiled up inside me. Before he could utter a word, I lashed out, my foot connecting squarely with his chest. He doubled over, gasping for air. I kicked him again and again, more than a dozen times, until my Italian leather shoe was scuffed and misshapen. His pretty face was now a swollen, bruised mess, with the perfect imprint of a size 11 sole stamped across it, from forehead to chin. My foot was starting to ache. Time to let someone else take over. I gave Rhino a look. "Break his legs." Rhino cracked his knuckles and moved toward Caleb. Caleb, who had been feigning unconsciousness, snapped his eyes open. "Mr. Hayes, what did I do? This is kidnapping. This is illegal. Is there no law in this country?" "The law," I scoffed. In this room, I am the law. What? You didn't think about the consequences when you were sleeping with my wife. Caleb's face paled, but he held firm. I don't know what you're talking about. I sat back, gesturing to Rhino. Tough guy. Let's see how tough he really is. Beat him until he talks. One of my men brought over a rusty metal chair. I settled into it and lit a cigarette. Rhino's eyes went cold. He delivered a single, brutal kick to Caleb's shin. A sickening crack echoed through the factory. Caleb let out a scream like a slaughtered pig. Rhino, methodical as ever, stepped on Caleb's other leg, putting his full weight on it until it, too, snapped. Caleb's screams grew louder, but through the pain, he still refused to confess. Rhino, I said calmly, shut him up. Rhino drew back his hand, as large as a dinner plate, and slapped Caleb across the face. I arg. Caleb screamed as two bloody teeth flew from his mouth. Are you going to talk? Slap. Talk. Slap. Talk. Slap. After a dozen more slaps, Caleb's face was an unrecognizable, swollen pulp. Landon Hayes, he coughed, spitting blood. You might as well just kill me. He tried to push himself up against a pillar, but his broken legs were useless, like strands of cooked spaghetti. The slightest movement sent waves of agony through him. Half his teeth were gone. He had the bravado of a movie hero, but this wasn't a movie. Rhino, his professional pride now wounded that this punk hadn't broken, reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of 10-penny nails. The moment Caleb saw the long, sharp points of steel, the color drained from his face. What? What are you doing? What am I doing? Rhino sneered. In a flash, he grabbed Caleb's hand and drove one of the nails straight through his thumb, pinning it to the concrete floor. The pain was instantaneous and absolute. Caleb's scream was a high-pitched, inhuman shriek, and his body began to convulse. When Rhino picked up a second nail, Caleb finally shattered. The smell of urine filled the air. I'll talk, he sobbed. Please stop. You're going to kill me. I walked over and pressed my shoe onto his head, grinding his face into the filthy floor. Should have talked when I asked nicely. When did it start? Oh, a year ago. You've got balls, sleeping with Landon Hayes' wife. I stared down into his terrified eyes. Mr. Hayes, it wasn't my fault. Sophie made me do it, he blubbered. Sophie made you? She made you get her pregnant with your child, so you could inherit my fortune. Caleb was trembling uncontrollably. Mr. Hayes, it was a moment of weakness. Please, just let me go. I'm begging you. It was Sophie, that bitch. She kept saying she hated this high society life, this arranged marriage. She wanted to fight for her destiny. I swear, I never wanted to cross you. He was a sniveling, weeping mess. I laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. You think she'll be sad to hear you say that? She's on an operating table right now, because of you. Caleb's face twisted in horror. Mr. Hayes, I'm innocent. Let me go, please, go after Sophie. It was all her idea. So this was him when the mask came off. His own life was all that mattered. I lifted his head by the hair, my eyes boring into his. I held his gaze for a long moment, and then a slow, cruel smile spread across my face. You regret it now? Too late. My eyes fell on the corner of a phone sticking out of his pocket. Unlock it, I said coldly. Caleb froze, his eyes wide with a new kind of terror. He refused to look at the phone, as if it contained a secret more damning than anything he could confess. Unlock it, I roared, slapping him again. I grabbed his hand and forced his thumb onto the fingerprint scanner. The phone unlocked. Caleb slumped to the ground like a corpse. I opened his iMessage. The top conversation was with a contact named My Everything Red Heart. The chat log was a sewer of explicit messages and dozens of photos. They'd rekindled their college flame a year ago. Beyond that, there were countless money transfers. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. All from Sophie to Caleb. His living expenses. She was using my money to fund her little boy toy. I scrolled through the messages, my rage building with every word. Then I found it. The last few texts. My Everything Red Heart. Caleb, once the baby is born, he'll get his shares in Hayes Global. Then we just need to arrange a little accident for Landon, and the entire company will be ours. Caleb, Sophie, are you sure about this? This is the Hayes family. His grandfather can make governors tremble. Can we really pull this off? My Everything Red Heart, we have to. Miller Industries is about to go under. I can't watch my grandfather's legacy turn to dust. My Everything Red Heart. Besides, I'm not scared. Why are you? Landon has no idea. The venom of a viper. She wasn't just after my money. She wanted me dead. The last of my control snapped. I hurled the phone against the concrete wall. It exploded into 1,000 pieces. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to cage the inferno inside me. Son of a bitch, I muttered. I turned to Rhino, cut off his hands, put him in a weighted bag, and throw him in Lake Michigan. Caleb's face contorted in sheer terror. He began crawling towards me, his broken legs dragging uselessly behind him, banging his forehead on the ground. Mr. Hayes, I was wrong. I was wrong. I'll never do it again. Please spare my life. Mercy. No one paid his desperate cries any attention. Two of my largest men grabbed him and dragged him behind a stack of rusted machinery. Just then, Leo rushed in, his face pale. He leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Sir, we have a background on Caleb's family. His father is deceased. He has a mother and a younger sister who just graduated from college. I have their numbers. He paused, his expression hardening. And sir, both of them work for Hayes' global subsidiaries. The mother is a finance manager. The sister, she's a procurement manager. A recent college graduate as a procurement manager? This had Sophie's fingerprints all over it. My own damn company. Infiltrated by this trash. Get a team from internal affairs. Find every single person in this company with ties to the Millers. I want a full purge. Don't be gentle. I'd rather fire 10 loyal employees than miss one traitor. And when we find them, sir? Leo asked. I glanced towards Rhino. Give the list to him. Fools. You don't poke the bear in its own den. You wanted to infiltrate my company? Fine. Miller Industries is finished. And you can all go feed the fish. I looked at the phone numbers in my hand. His mother and sister. An idea, cold and sharp, formed in my mind. Wait. Don't dump him in the lake just yet. Bring him back out. A moment later, they dragged Caleb out. He was a broken, bleeding mess, his arms now hanging at unnatural angles. He was barely conscious. Mr. Hayes, he gasped. I was wrong. Spare me. I smiled and held the phone to his ear. Call your mother and sister. I purred. Get them over here. You do that, and I'll let you live to see the sunrise. Caleb stared at me, uncomprehending. Then the realization dawned, and he began to sob. Mr. Hayes, my family has nothing to do with this. Kill me, do whatever you want of me, but please not them. My mother has worked hard her whole life. My sister just graduated, he pleaded. Nothing to do with it. I sneered. She had everything to do with getting a cushy executive job at my company, didn't she? You weren't worried about involving family then, were you? Caleb had no answer. He knew. Sophie had wanted to put his sister in the C-suite, but he'd cautiously suggested a manager role instead. It hadn't saved him. He hesitated. I grunted. Rhino, the knife. Let's see if he can start a new life as a soprano. Rhino pulled a wicked-looking combat knife from his belt and let the blade glint under the dim factory lights, his eyes fixed on Caleb's crotch. A wave of cold dread washed over Caleb. I'll do it. I'll call, he screamed. But you have to keep your word, Mr. Hayes. Of course. But if you try any tricks, I'll make sure the three of you have a family reunion at the bottom of the lake. I held the phone to his ear and dialed his sister's number. A mature woman's voice answered. Caleb, honey? What is it? Mom, he choked out. Get Chloe and come have dinner with me. I booked a table at Alinea. Oh, wonderful. And I have the keys to that new condo I bought for you. Perfect timing. Caleb instinctively asked, Mom, where did you get the money for a condo? She laughed lightly. From the company, silly. Your mother is an old pro at cooking the books, and with Chloe in procurement, it's foolproof. Don't you worry. We have another big kickback coming next month. We're going to get Chloe a new Porsche. He started to say something, but then he saw my face, a mask of thunderous rage. He swallowed and forced himself to continue. Great. I'll send a car for you. After he hung up, Caleb's face was a study in despair. Leo, I said, get a couple of beds. Bring them here. Stealing from my company? My money? The company my grandfather built from nothing? A new hire skimming enough for a condo in her first month? In 6 months, she'd have bled a whole division dry. The thought reignited my fury. I walked over and kicked Caleb a few more times for good measure. $1 million. More than most people see in a lifetime. Soon, 2 bare mattresses were placed on the grimy floor of the factory. Evening was falling. The sky outside streaked with orange and red. It was the end of a very long day. But the night was far from over. String him up again, I ordered, and gag him. I want him to have a good view. Leo's scalp prickled. So this was how a Titan took his revenge. It was brutal. It was horrifying. But God, it was effective. He couldn't imagine what he would do if his own wife had betrayed him like this, try to steal his fortune, take his life, and infest his work with her parasitic family. He doubted he'd have the stomach for it. A silver Maybach soon pulled up outside. Inside, Caleb's mother and sister, Chloe, were excitedly discussing where they would go shopping after dinner. But as the car drove deeper into the desolate industrial park, a flicker of unease began to set in. They questioned the driver, but the stone-faced man in sunglasses didn't say a word. Before they knew what was happening, the car stopped. The doors were wrenched open, and they were dragged out like livestock. Who are you? What are you doing? Ow! Let go of me. You're hurting my arm. You thugs. I'm calling the police. My son is the vice president of Miller Industries. They screamed and struggled, fumbling for their phones, only to have them snatched away and smashed on the pavement. A moment later, they were bound and thrown onto the mattresses. Looking around at the decaying factory and the circle of menacing, muscular men, the reality of their situation finally crashed down on them. Who are you people? The mother stammered, her voice trembling. What do you want? My son is a VP. If it's money you want, I can give you two. No, $3 million. Just let us go. Chloe was curled into a ball, sobbing. A VP, you say? I drawled, pointing up at the figure hanging from the rafters. You mean that one? The mother squinted into the gloom. After a long moment, she recognized the battered, bloody figure. A horrified scream tore from her throat. See, Caleb. At the sound of her voice, Caleb stirred. Seeing his mother and sister, his face twisted in agony. Mom, Chloe, run. Get out of here. Run. I chuckled. Where are they going to run to? I walked slowly over to Chloe, tilting her chin up with my finger. You behave yourselves, and I might consider letting you live. Chloe's fear suddenly morphed into fury. She lunged forward and tried to bite my hand. Go to hell, she spat. Impressive. Very defiant. What are you all waiting for? I roared at my men, who had been watching with a mixture of awe and fear. Get to work. There'll be a bonus in it for all of you. Their hesitation vanished, replaced by a grim eagerness. We live to serve you, mister. Hayes, they chorused. Caleb thrashed against his bonds, his muffled screams filled with rage and despair. Hayes, you coward. Come after me. Leave them alone. You bastard. You demon. I'll see you in hell. For hours later, I stepped out of the factory into the cool night air. Inside, the mother and daughter were broken, their eyes vacant like marionettes with their strings cut. Tomorrow morning, I told Rhino, put Caleb in the lake. From behind me, I heard Caleb's hoarse, desperate cry. Landa Hayes, you lied. You went back on your word. I turned and gave him a cold smile. I said I'd let you live to see the sunrise. I never said anything about what would happen after. Caleb hung there, limp and defeated. Sir, what about the two women? Rhino asked. Send them to Vinny's place over in Gary, I said. Vinny ran operations you didn't read about in the papers. I had thought Chloe was some innocent girl caught in the crossfire. But the filth on her work computer told a different story. She wasn't a victim. To protect some future poor bastard from her, this was the only way. I beckoned Leo over. That townhouse in Lincoln Park. The one I bought for the marriage. Sell it. And everything of Sophie's inside, throw it in the lake. The thought of her poison, made my stomach turn. And the baby? Has it been dealt with? Leo shook his head. I just spoke with the hospital. The attending physician says the patient is emotionally unstable and that forcing the procedure now could be dangerous. My eyes narrowed. Dangerous? And Stephen Miller? Where is he? I asked. Hospital security saw him enter Mrs. Hayes' room, but they haven't seen him leave. A cold dread washed over me. The old bastard was playing games. Fire that doctor. Immediately. Fly in a team from the Mayo Clinic. I want the procedure done tonight. And give me 50 men from my grandfather's Aegis security detail. If that bastard child was born, the Hayes family would be a laughingstock. I couldn't believe Stephen Miller had the balls to defy me. Call the board. I want a full-spectrum corporate assault on Miller Industries. I want them bankrupt by sunrise. The Hayes family had dominated this state for a century. We weren't just old money. We were kingmakers. Did they really think we were soft touch? Leaving the derelict factory behind, I headed for Lakeside Private. If this woman was going to be difficult, I'd be happy to give her a little push. The Hayes family name would not be tarnished. On the way, Leo spoke up tentatively. Mr. Hayes, should we inform your grandfather about this? I wave him off. No. Why would I bother the old man with this kind of filth? If I needed my grandfather to clean up my messes, I might as well just end it all now. What would his old friends on the national stage think of him? About 30 minutes later, Leo's phone rang. It was the hospital. Sir, we found out what happened. Sophie's attending physician was on the Miller payroll. If Rhino and his team hadn't arrived when they did, they would have already moved her to another facility. So, their infiltration of my world was deeper than I'd thought. A chill ran down my spine. If I hadn't found that report in my desk drawer, I'd still be in the dark, a smiling fool. The venom of a woman, the scheming of a lesser man. When the two combine, the fallout is catastrophic. What about Stephen Miller? Any sign of him? I demanded. Leo shook his head. He's vanished, sir. The CEO of a major, if failing, corporation had simply disappeared. We arrived at the hospital. The top floor VIP wing was already locked down by Rhino and dozens of Aegis operators. The new medical team from the Mayo Clinic had arrived, so dedicated they'd even brought their own nurses. The message was clear. Lakeside Private, a Hay-Zone hospital, could no longer be trusted. The irony was suffocating. Inside her room, Sophie heard our footsteps. She scrambled to the glass door, her face pressed against it. When I entered, she fell to her knees, her eyes red and raw from crying. "Landon, I'm begging you, please, spare him," she pleaded. "The doctor told me, if I do this, I might never be able to have children again. Please, have mercy." I grabbed her chin, my fingers digging into her skin. "Sophie, if you wanted to be a mother so badly, you should have married Caleb Vance. Why the hell did you drag me into it?" I wasn't thinking straight," she whispered, her eyes cast down in shame. "In Miller Industries. We were desperate." She looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "But I promise, after he's born, I'll disappear. We'll leave Chicago. You'll never see me or hear from the Millers again." I laughed. The woman's audacity was breathtaking. "For the sake of your maternal instincts, you're willing to drag the Hayes family name through the mud? Sophie, you have a lot of nerve." "Just listen to my offer," she said frantically. "My father is willing to sign over 50% of Miller Industries, and he'll give you a list of every Miller loyalist working inside Hayes Global." I just stared at her. "Miller Industries is already mine for the taking. I don't need you to give me what I already own. As for the traitors in my company, I'll conduct my own house cleaning. And tell your father that if he doesn't show his face in the next hour, he'll regret what I do to what's left of his family." Sophie's eyes widened. She couldn't believe I could be so utterly ruthless. But she had no other cards to play. She fell to the floor and wrapped her arms around my legs. "Landon, I'm begging you." I shoved her away. The new medical team, who had been waiting for my signal, surged into the room. On the rooftop helipad, my private helicopter stood waiting. It was covered in cartoon stickers, a whimsical touch I'd planned as a surprise for Sophie once. Now it just looked pathetic. The lead surgeon from the Mayo team approached me. "Mr. Hayes, the procedure was successful." A weight lifted from my chest. I felt empty. There was no thrill of victory, no satisfying sting of revenge. Just a profound, bone-deep weariness. Life in the gilded cage wasn't glamorous. It was a battlefield. The glittering surface hid a world of knives in the dark. If I hadn't destroyed Caleb Vance tonight, once they had hollowed out Hayes Global from the inside, my end would have been far worse than his. "Mr. Hayes, we still have no sign of Stephen Miller," Leo reported. "Don't worry. He'll surface. Sophie is his only daughter," I said with a faint smile. "Leo, get the legal team. Draft an acquisition agreement. I want to buy Miller Industries for $1. "Right away, sir." Just as I predicted, 2 hours later, Stephen Miller appeared at the hospital entrance, demanding to see me. The moment we were face to face, he cut to the chase. "Landon, you have Caleb. The child is gone. I want you to let my daughter go." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "She's the only family I have left. I'm asking for your mercy." I lit a cigarette, taking my time, letting the smoke cloud the air between us before I spoke. Sophie already made an offer. 50% of the company. I wasn't satisfied. A flicker of something, maybe the last embers of his pride, died in his eyes. He grit his teeth. "Name your price, Landon. Anything within my power." I slid the freshly printed acquisition agreement across the table. He picked it up. His eyes scanned the document, then froze, fixated on the purchase price. $100. His face darkened, and the words came out low and tight, squeezed from his throat. "Landon, this is robbery." I gave him a shameless smile. "Old man, don't delude yourself. Miller Industries isn't the powerhouse it used to be. Without my capital injection, it would have been bankrupt 6 months ago. As it stands, it's already insolvent. You honestly think you're in any position to negotiate with me?" He already knew. He received the alerts. Hayes Global was launching a coordinated attack on every one of his business interests. His teetering company was already drowning. There would be no rescue. He didn't dare ask what would happen to the Miller loyalists inside my company. He had to save himself. But the thought of signing away his family's legacy, his grandfather's work, a bleak despair settled over him. It was a high-stakes gamble, and he had lost. Now it was time to pay the price. Stephen Miller covered his face with his hands, sitting in silence for a long time. Finally, he looked up, his voice a hoarse whisper. "All right, I hope you'll be a man of your word and let me and my daughter leave Chicago." "Of course," I said, smiling as I signed my name with a flourish. When it was his turn, Stephen's hand trembled as he held the pen. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then scrawled his name. In that instant, it was as if he aged 20 years. The lines on his face deepened. His movements became slow, heavy. "Can I take my daughter now?" he asked, his voice hollow. I nodded. "Leo, arrange a car. Escort them to the state line." Half an hour later, the hostile takeover of Miller Industries was in full swing across all departments. I called Rhino into my office. "I want you to tail the Millers. Be discreet." I made a sharp, cutting motion across my throat. Rhino understood immediately. He nodded and left. As the head of the Hayes family, I knew a fundamental truth better than anyone. You cut the weed out by the root. Let them go now, and in 10 years they might come back to burn my entire world down. There's no defense against an enemy you willingly set free. Sophie, don't blame me. You're the one who made the wrong choice. Some mistakes can't be unmade. They can only be paid for. Mr. Hayes. Leo entered, holding a thick file. Internal Affairs has finished their sweep. They found everyone. This is the list. It was dozens of pages long. "Give it to Rhino," I said with a sigh, closing my eyes. A few days later, I was in my office, dealing with the last of the Miller Industries integration when my grandfather called. "Landon, my boy, I found a perfect girl for you. She's from the Huang family, an absolute sweetheart. Impeccable family, wonderful girl. Why don't you make some time in your schedule, and we can get you two married?" A shiver went down my spine. "Grandfather," I said, rubbing my temples, "go fishing. Play a round of golf. My love life is the last thing you need to worry about right now." I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair, the exhaustion of the past week finally settling in.